Okay, so we have, give me another few seconds, see if anybody else is coming in. All right, it's 1 o'clock. Aloha and welcome to iTeach808, Empowering Hawaii's Teachers in Technology Conference, sponsored by the Augustine Educational Foundation and Sacred Hearts Academy, Honolulu. My name is Stan Renan, and I'll be co-facilitating this session with Derek Lee. We're so honored to have Melissa Nakamura join us today and share her expertise through a 45-minute presentation named Google Slides, Tips, and Basic Slide Design. Please be aware that we'll be recording this session. If you don't like being recorded, you may consider turning off your camera during the session or reviewing the recording afterwards. The recording will be made available on YouTube and shared on iTeach808's website a week after this event. Without further ado, I'll turn it over to Melissa Nakamura.
Thank you for that introduction. Hi, everyone. My name is Melissa Nakamura, and I'll be doing a presentation for you on Google Slides. So again, my name is Melissa Nakamura. I'm an instructional designer. This is just a fancy term for I design online curriculum at the University of Hawaii, Kapiolani Community College. So for today, I just wanted to kind of go over a few things about Google Slides. So first, I want to go over the differences between Google Slides and Microsoft PowerPoint, because they are very similar, but there's some differences between them. Then I'll show you some basic features of Google Slides. I'm not going to pay a whole lot of attention to this aspect, and instead we'll be focusing more on some additional features of Google Slides, and then finally some tips on slide design. If you have any questions, please feel free to post them in the chat. This presentation will probably run the entire 45 minutes. I'll try to get some time at the end to answer your questions, but please feel free to post them in the chat, and I'll try to get to them as they appear. So first, I wanted to talk about the differences between Google Slides and Microsoft PowerPoint. So there are differences, right? They're very similar. They're both presentation softwares. One is made by Google, another is made by Microsoft. So with Google Slides, right, if you have used Google Slides, it's a web-based software created by Google. And the nice thing with Google Slides, though, right, is that it allows you to collaborate with others, right? So if you're working on a presentation in a team, you can easily share the document with your team members, and you can all collaborate working on one document. You can all go in at the same time and all edit the document at the same time. Another nice thing about Google Slides, it allows for conversion between Google Slides and PowerPoint and vice versa, right? So if you start a presentation in Google Slides, there is a download as feature where you can then download it as a PowerPoint, save it on your computer, and then you can actually open it up in PowerPoint and continue to work on it. Or vice versa, right? If you started a presentation in PowerPoint, you can easily upload it into your Google Drive and open it up into Google Slides. Whereas in PowerPoint, right, it's a Microsoft software. The collaboration is not as easy as I just mentioned, right? Because the file is locally saved on your computer. So you're going to have to do the more traditional route if you are collaborating with others to create a presentation, right? So you're going to have to start the presentation file, email it to someone, they can edit it, email it to someone, they can edit it, and so forth. So collaboration is not as easy with PowerPoint as it is with Google Slides. The nice thing about PowerPoint, though, is it is more robust, right? Because you're paying for this software. Google Slides is free. So, you're paying for a software. It's more robust. It has more features than Google Slides. But honestly, in my opinion, working with both, if you're just creating a simple presentation like how I am today, Google Slides is very sufficient, right? It does its job. PowerPoint, where I say it has more functions, a lot of it is actually the more nice to have kind of things. For example, there's more animation options or transition options, but Google Slides has all those too, but maybe just not as much, right? So, even though I say it has more functions, more robust, um, to be quite honest, if you're just doing a presentation like how I'm doing today, Google Slides is more than sufficient, I think. So as I mentioned, right, you can download. The nice thing with Google Slides is that you can download Google Slides files as a PowerPoint. You're able to upload PowerPoint presentations to Google Drive and convert it to a Google Slides document. One thing I'd like to point out though, if you are going to be doing this conversion, with any conversions, you want to check that document um, before you present it, because Google Slides is created by Google, PowerPoint is created by Microsoft. So it's two different companies. So the software is a little bit different, similar but different. So translation wise, it's not 100%, right? Um, I always use the analogy. It's almost like Google Slides has a Southern accent and Microsoft has a New England accent, right? Very similar, but just a little bit different. So when you're doing these conversions, when you're downloading it and whatnot, you want to review the document first, because sometimes the document, their images or even your text might shift a little on the slide. Okay. Also, to Google Slides and PowerPoint, they don't have the exact same fonts available. So if you are, going from PowerPoint to Google Slides, if you're using a font in PowerPoint that Google Slides doesn't, what will happen is Google Slides is going to just try to find the closest thing that it has, and it will use that. So when it does that, sometimes even then your um, slides may shift a little, right? So um, it may appear bigger, it may appear smaller. So you want to make sure, if you are converting them one way or another, you give yourself time to go in and review all the slides. You want to review all the slides um, just to check for any of these anomalies. Okay. So, my recommendation is, if you're, doing a presentation and your intent is to download, a Google slide to a PowerPoint presentation, I probably wouldn't do it 15 minutes prior to your presentation, right? You may want to do it the day before, right? Just so that you have time to kind of work out if there are some shifts. Okay. So some of the basic Google Slides functions. So here I just have a list of some of the basic Google Slide functions. If you have experience creating presentations, which I'm thinking a lot of you have, these should all be familiar to you, but I just wanted you to have this available. You can click on the links. I'm sorry, you know what? Let me go back to the beginning. If you do want to follow along with this presentation, and I'll put the link in the chat, um, feel free to do so, because there are a lot of links that I do have in the presentation. So please feel free to follow along if you want to. So going back to this slide about Google functions, Google Slide functions, they're all clickable links that'll take you to a tutorial page on how to do some of these basic functions. I didn't want to cover all of them. I just wanted you to be aware that they do exist if you didn't know some of these features were available to you. Okay. So you can always, after this presentation, take a look at some of these functions. But what I do want to spend more time on is some additional features of Google Slides that you may not necessarily know about, that might help you with your presentation. So I wanted to talk about changing your present view when you do presentations. I'll talk about closed captioning and then also some add-ons that are available in Google Slides. So the one thing I want to point out is that you can change your present view. So the day of your presentation, right, we normally, if you're using Google Slides, you go to that upper right-hand corner, you hit present, and then you have a full screen, right, of their presentation. And most people will then conduct their presentation in that full screen. If you notice with my presentation, it is a full screen, but you notice up here, I do have my web browser available. So let me just show you what I mean. So if I exit and I'm in my edit view of the presentation, right? And when I go to present, I am in my full screen, right? So my presentation is taking up my entire screen, right? But a lot of times, and I'm sure many of you go through this when you're teaching, especially, you want to go between perhaps your presentation and maybe your online classroom. So if you're using like Google Classroom or something, or a WordPress, or even just another website that you want to refer to while you're teaching, you then gonna have to exit out of, right? Exit out of this full screen, right? Open up a browser and then go about what you're doing. And when you do that, it sometimes, it gets kind of confusing, I think, sometimes from a viewer perspective, because you're changing from full screen, now you're going into, web browser screen. So it gets sometimes confusing where you are. And, sometimes maybe your students might get lost. So what you can do is you can actually open it up and then keep your web browser there so that you can still access your other web pages. So how would you do that? You still go to present, right? But here at the bottom where you have all of your functions, you want to click on this little, I don't know what it's called, the four corners, I guess. If you click on that, you notice now my presentation got shrunken, but I do now have access to my web pages, right? So if I can present, I can talk to, if you have your presentation, you can talk about it. And then let's say you want to refer something from another web page, or maybe you want to show something in your Google Classroom, right? You can easily have it ready and you just flip. So see how it's a little bit easier to see versus having to go from full screen, to out of full screen, back into full screen. So I just wanted to mention that it's an easy way for you to show other websites while you're also presenting, and I think it also helps to keep you organized as well, so you can just toggle easily between your different pages. Okay. Closed captioning. So this is a nice thing about Google Slides. So if you wanted to turn on closed captioning for your students or for your audience, you can do so. Again, it's at the bottom. So when you have that navigation bar or that function bar at the bottom of your screen, if you just click on caption, so you should now see my captions. And if you notice, it's pretty good. Yeah, the words are picking up pretty well. It does not have punctuation, so it's just very continuous. But as you can see, the captioning is pretty accurate. So if you wanted to turn on your captions, you can. And if you're in a Zoom room, such as we are right now, and you're recording, the caption should pick up in the recording as well. Okay. If you go back to your function bar and you click on the little arrow next to caption, you can actually change the positioning. So if you want it above your presentation, you can do that. If you want to change the text size, you can also do that. So if you want it bigger, you can do that. If you want it smaller, you can also do that as well. So it's a really nice tool, added feature to Google Slides. I will say that the captioning, though, is only available in English right now, as far as I know. If you do, so say, for example, teach a language class, it will be written out in English. So it's not that it won't pick it up necessarily, but it won't pick it up in a in its native language. So, for example, Japanese. If I say "Ohayo gozaimasu," see how it writes it out, but it's in English, right? It's not going to uh, write it in Japanese in the kanji, right? It's in Romanji, right? But other than that, it's pretty good. As you can see, it does pick up Hawaiian words pretty well. So if I say Hawaii, it writes it out pretty correct. I mean, it wrote it out correctly. Kalakaua, that one's not too great. So it depends, right? It'll try its best. A lot of it will depend on your audio. So you want to make sure you speak clearly and loudly into your microphone so it picks up. Accents, it sometimes might have problems. So you may want to also enunciate if you're using the captions, but for the most part, it's trying its best. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off, but that's the caption tool. It's a pretty cool tool that you can use when you're presenting. The next thing I wanted to point out is the add-ons. So add-ons you may have heard about. So there's two, there's a distinction. You may have heard of extensions and you may have heard of add-ons. Extension and add-ons are essentially additional features to help you. It's to help your experience in a web browser or a Google application. So extensions are added features to help your experience in a web browser, so such as Chrome or Firefox. Add-ons, very similar, is features that is supposed to enhance your experience using Google products, such as Google Docs, Sheets, Slides, and Forms, I believe. So extensions are in your upper right-hand corner. So I use Chrome. So this little puzzle icon is your extensions. And they're just there to help enhance your experience in your when you're using the web. Similar for add-ons. So here are some examples, if you're aware of them, but I'll go over add-ons anyways for Google Slides. So where you can find the add-ons is if you look in your Google Slides, when you're editing your Google Slides document, right, you have your toolbar at the top, right here. So one of them is called add-ons. When you click on that, you'll be brought to this screen here. And here is where you can add add-ons, okay? Add-ons will be different if you're using Google Slides versus Google Docs versus Sheets or Forms. Because, as you know, right, each of those 4 different applications do different things. So, depending on what you're using, the add-ons are going to be, it could be different, right? Add-ons are not created by Google and are instead created by third-party companies, right? So similar to your apps on your mobile devices, right? They're created by a different company, right? So for example, I have an iPhone. all the apps are in the App Store are not created by Apple, right? It's created by other companies as well. So very similar. Companies will create these add-ons. It gets sent to Google. They'll vet it, make sure it's safe, make sure it's compatible for their product. And if it is, they'll put it out there for the public to use. So I will show you quickly an example of how to do these add-ons. So, right, I'm in my edit version, right, of my Google Slides document. So up here you have add-on. So if you click on it, if you go to get add-ons, similar to your app store, right, you're gonna see a whole slew of different add-ons that you can add. So you're going to want to take a look. And similar to your app, you also have the ratings, how many people, what the rating was, and you can also see comments made by people who have previously used it. So depending on what you want to add on, right? Depending on what you want to do, you may want to either go through the whole thing just to see what's available. You can always do a search right up here to see what's available. So one that I will recommend 100% to get is Grackle Slides. This is an accessibility checker for Google Slides. So it's going to check to make sure your slides are ADA compliant. Okay, so if I want, so let's say I like this one, I'll click on it. So normally I already have this installed. When you want to install, it'll just say install here, so you can click on it to install. But you can also take a look. Here's an overview, and then, I already have it installed, so I can rate it. But then if you go down here, you can then start to see all the reviews and their comments as well. So you can always check to review, the product before you actually install. So you say, yep, I like this. All right. So you go up here and you'll just hit install. And then it'll get added to your list of add-ons. So once you, once you start going through and you start adding them, you install them, right? Now it's like, okay, where are they, right? So you go back to add-ons, and here is your list of the add-ons that you have added. Okay, you can also manage your add-ons. So you can see all the ones that you have. And let's say I don't want one, I can always uninstall from here as well. Okay. So there's a question about what are the best add-ons, which ones do you use the most? So here are my add-ons. Some of them I was just playing around with just to see, but like I said, Grackle Slides, I definitely recommend adding on because this will check for ADA compliance. Pexels and Unsplash are websites that have free images that you can download to your for your presentations. So these ones are nice, and so there's no copyrights on them. You're free to use them. So for example, if I click on Unsplash, the nice thing is it pops up right here in your window, right? Because normally, I'm sure most of you experience, right? It's like, okay, I want to look for a picture, so I'm going to have to go to Google, type in a search, right? Look for the picture, download it to my computer, and then put it up into your presentation. The nice thing with the Pexels, so Pexels and Unsplash add-ons is that it opens up right here into your document. So you don't even have to leave your window, right? And then you can just do a search. So, let's say I want to look for a turtle image. So here pops up all the turtle image that's on the Unsplash website. And so I can just scroll and look, right? And you can find which one you want. the one you want, you would just click on it. It's going to take, sometimes it takes some time. And there it goes. It pops up right into your presentation. And then from there, you can just, size it to whatever liking you need. And you can just, put it where you want it. But so that's the nice thing about these add-ons. It's part of it is to help save you time. It takes away a couple steps like that, right? You don't have to go into a website, download it, upload it, and all that, right? It's just right there. Okay. Some of the other ones I have is icons. So if you wanted to add an icon to your presentation, you can find that here as well. So, Instagram, I can change the size of how big I want it. Oops. And so I'm going to do it smaller. And then you can just hit insert. And there it is. So again, very easy for you to just add images, add icons into your presentation. So it really helps to save you on time. This other one is a font. This one's kind of fun. I don't know, I think. Oh, no, this isn't the one. Sorry, no, I was thinking of a different one. This one has additional fonts that you can use. So if you don't like the ones that is already in Google Slides, here are additional ones that you can choose from. So, this one is more of a nice to have kind of a thing. So you can, so there are tons of different add-ons. You just want to check. You can always do a Google search on best. I think I've seen web pages like best add-ons for educators. And so that's where I kind of go to look for recommended add-ons as an educator. So here's the ones that I just showed you about. Again, Grackle, very important, I think, to have. So now I just wanted to go into the tips on slide designs. Okay. So I'll give you, a couple seconds to read this cartoon here. Right, I'm sure we have experienced this, right? Where you sit at a presentation and the person's reading their presentation, very boring, and you're probably starting to fall asleep. Right, so what I hope to do is to present with you some tips on how to avoid that and to keep your audience engaged in your presentation. So here's some font tips. You want to make sure you use appropriate legible fonts that are appropriate for your presentations, right? So if you're doing a presentation at a conference, probably not a good idea to have like those fun, type of fonts. You probably want to keep something a little bit more professional. Whereas maybe if you're doing a presentation with your students and, you can probably get away with a little bit more of those fun type fonts, right? But you want to make sure they're readable, right? So here's some examples of serif and sans serif fonts. Can anyone tell me what is the difference between the two? Feel free to post them in the chat. I'll give it a couple seconds. So here's some examples of serifs. Here's some of sans serif. Can you tell me the difference between the two? Not quite the bold. Good try though. So with serifs, if you notice, they have these little foot or feet. Yeah. If you notice with sans serif, it's very clean. There's no feet. So sans serif actually means no feet, right? It doesn't have these little feet at the bottom or at the ends of the letters. So there's a debate as to which font to use, but some say that the sans serif font is better to use when doing presentations, mainly because depending upon your word or your letter combination, if you're using serif font, sometimes the letters can merge. And so if you're sitting far back in a room, sometimes it will, it may appear like one, it may be harder to read the word. So that's why people are saying sans serif might be the better option. But again, there's no hard fast rule. Okay. I did provide this Google Font Sheet website. So if you click on this Google Font Sheet website, it lists all the fonts available with Google. So up here in the categories, you can actually filter out serif versus sans serif. So if I click and I just want to look at serif fonts, here are all the different fonts that are serif fonts. And here's an example of what it looks like. So if you're not too sure, right, you can always come to the site and you can just click on the appropriate category to let you know which one is which, if you wanted to, follow that font. You do want to use the same font throughout your presentation, but you can use another font if you want to emphasize something. And you want to keep it legible, right? Because this is probably not easy to read, especially if you have a whole slide of that, right? So what you want to do is you want to make sure that your font is readable and that your font enhances your presentation and not distract your audience from it, right? Okay. Minimum font size, probably 18, preferably 24. It again is going to depend. 18 to 24 is probably good for Zoom. If you're doing Zoom sessions, because your audience is closer to their computer so they can see it. But if you're doing like a conference and you're in a big room with a couple hundred people, whenever we can go back to that again, you may want to increase your font size, right? It just really depends on the environment that you're doing your presentation in. The recommendation is no more than 2 different font sizes per slide. Again, you don't want to distract your audience, right? So here I just have an example. This is the one at font size 10. I mean, even sitting in front of your computer, this is probably a little bit hard to read, right? Font size 24, this is definitely a lot easier to read, right? So size does matter. Color can affect the tone, effectiveness, and the legibility of your presentations. It can also, be a distraction. The main thing, again, like I've been saying, right, is you don't want to cause your presentation to be a distraction, right? So you don't want to be competing with your presentation, meaning you don't want your audience to be focused so much on your presentation, trying to read it, that what are they not doing? They're not listening to you, right? Because they're trying to read and see what's on your slide, and they're not listening to you, right? So you don't want to be competing with your presentation. Your presentation is there to enhance your presentation, not a distraction, right? So colors can affect your presentation. The recommendation is blue, green, purple are ideal for background. Red, yellow, orange are more for foreground or like text type items. But be careful of these color combinations, okay? So for example, here is yellow text on a blue background. So this is an appropriate color combination, right? So, and actually this is what they recommend. If you're doing a presentation in a large conference room, they say this color combination is the best. Like the person in the back of the room would be able to see your presentation. Not the best, I think, in terms of prettiness, but if you're looking for effectiveness, this is it. So this one, right, very easy to read and, not distracting. Take a look at this one. Same thing though, right? I said warm color in the background, cool color in the front, right? I have the same, so I'm following that guideline. But this is not easy to read, right? Very hard. Okay, so you want to make sure you kind of watch your color combinations and that you don't have something like this, because this is kind of glaring, right? So make sure you just be careful about that. Animations and transitions. So this is what I mean by animations, right? When you're bringing things in. So ideally, you don't want to have more than 2 animations per slide. Again, a distraction, right? You want to use it to just emphasize something, bring attention to something. You want your audience attention focused on a specific area of your presentation. So that's when you probably want to do animations. Or if you're trying to do something like this, when you want to bring in the topic one at a time, again, to focus your audience on a specific topic that you're talking about. And simplicity is best, right? Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should, right? So if I did that, that did absolutely nothing to my presentation and what I'm talking about to you, except to emphasize that it's not always the best thing to do just because they can do it, right? So, simplicity is good. Simplicity doesn't mean boring. I always tell people, simplicity doesn't have to be boring. You can still have a beautiful presentation, but you don't need to have all the bells and whistles flying around all over the place, because you're going to lose your audience, right? So just something to keep in mind. Text on your slide, your audience can read faster than you, right? So by the time I finish talking about this, you guys have already read it. So ideally, you want to keep 1 concept per slide. The 3-second rule, meaning in 3 seconds, your audience has probably read your entire presentation that's on your slide, right? So that's what you want, because you want them to spend the first 3 seconds reading your presentation and then focusing on your voice, okay? I have here a link to a TED Talk. Larry Lessig is a Harvard professor at Harvard law professor. He has a very interesting presentation style. He did this TED Talk, 18-minute TED Talk presentation with 200 slides. His presentations are very interesting. He does 1 slide, he might have 1 word, 1 picture, okay, but he's talking, right? But it all matches what he's talking about. So it's just an example of a way to present. Doesn't mean you have to do it this way. I just wanted to provide you with an example of another way to do a presentation. And I will tell you, it does take practice. The way he does it, it takes practice on his presentation style. So it's not that I'm encouraging you to do it this way. I just wanted to show you another example of how other people are doing presentations. Bullet points, generally you want to kind of do it like newspaper headliners, right? Short. Don't do your whole paragraph of what you're talking about, right? Preferably 3 bullet per slide. I have 4. Yeah, that's okay. It's not too bad. Sentences should not pass 1 line generally. Okay, but it happens, right? So not too bad. Here's a presentation that Gar Reynolds did. Again, you can take a look at how he did it. He did, very short words. He uses images, right? Because they say images can replace 1,000 words, right? So, if you can, again, just another example of how to do a presentation, a different way to do a presentation. Okay. Preset themes, right? So if, when you start off in Google Slides or even in PowerPoint, what do you start off with? You start off with this big white blank slides, right? So if you don't want to spend the time having to create make your slides look pretty and having all these decorative stuff around your slides, you can always use preset themes. So here I have Slides Carnival and slidesgo.com. They have free PowerPoint, Google Slides templates that you can just easily download and use it. They're free. Slides Go, I just found out this morning. Apparently you can download X amount for free without having to sign up. And then at some point you have to sign up. So that's what happened to me this morning. I was trying to download a slide presentation from Slides Go, and they told me you have maxed out on your free downloads. You're gonna have to sign up. Signing up is free though. I mean, you don't have to pay. It's just that they want you to sign up to their site. So I did. I had to. Very easy though. So it's still free, right? They're just capturing your information. Okay. So take a look at these two. There's others out there. You can always Google it, but these are the two that I think have some really, really good templates. So here's some additional resources that I have for you. This is a YouTube video by a corporate comedian. He talks about life after death by PowerPoint. Just basically going over some stuff that I just talked about, like what not to do. It's actually really funny. It was made I think like 5 years ago, but I think it's still applicable. It just pokes at all the things that people do or have done with PowerPoint. Here's another one about billboards and slides, learning from IKEA. So the reason I put this one up was because what you can also do is when you're thinking about creating a presentation and to keep your audience engaged, you can kind of think of creating your slides like billboards, right? So if you've been to the mainland, you've seen those billboards, right? If you're driving by and you're driving at 60, 70 miles an hour and you see these big billboards, they have seconds to capture your attention, right? And to be able to convey their message to you in a matter of seconds, right? So if you think about how they design those billboards, you can kind of use some of that design into your presentations, right? Because again, you don't want to be competing with your presentation. So if you have that audience who can read your presentation and understand what you're going to be talking about in that 3 seconds, you've, I think, accomplished a lot. Okay. And then here's another website on Gar Reynolds' presentation tips. Take a look at that. He was the one who created using more pictures, short words, little words, and stuff like that to portray that message across. Okay. So that concludes my my presentation on Google Slides. I do ask if you could please, at the end, when you have time, if you can complete this evaluation for me to help me, improve on my presentation, in particular this one. So I have the link in the chat there. Oops, sorry, hang on. Let me put it. So let me put it into the chat there. So if you have time, should only take a couple minutes to complete. And then I have my email address. If you want to contact me about anything, please feel free to do so. I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible, and I hope I can answer your question. But here I'm also including the link if you want the link to the presentation. I'm posting it into the chat again. So, there is a lot of links in there, so please feel free to take that and save that link for you for future references. So I appreciate you attending today, and thank you very much.
All right, mahalo, Melissa Nakamura, and for everyone's participation. We hope you find this session helpful and make some valuable connections. Thank you for being here today. Feel free to join our other sessions coming up and have a wonderful day.